Welcome back to Shadow Fear. Tonight, we're not heading into haunted houses or abandoned towns. We're staying on the road. The same frozen highways truckers, hunters, and travelers use every day. But these aren't just stories. These are true encounters, taken from real Alaskans who swore they saw or heard something that shouldn't exist out there. My name's Mike, and I've been driving trucks for over 15 years now. Most of those years I've spent up here in Alaska, where the roads are long. The weather's brutal, and sometimes it feels like the land itself is watching you. You learn a few things out here. Always keep your fuel tank full. Never trust the weather report. And if you ever see something strange on the road at night, you don't stop. But one night I broke that last rule. And I still regret it. This happened about 6 winters ago, somewhere around Turnagain Pass, a stretch of highway between Anchorage and Seward. It's beautiful in the daytime, when the snow-covered mountains glow under the sunlight. But at night, when the wind starts screaming through the valleys and the snow blinds your headlights, it feels like the end of the world. That night, I was hauling fuel for a small company out of Anchorage. It was late, close to 3 a.m., and I was the only one on the road. I remember because I hadn't seen another pair of headlights for almost an hour. The snow was falling hard, so thick that it looked like a million white bugs swarming my windshield. The CB radio was dead silent, and all I could hear was the hum of the engine and the occasional groan of the trailer behind me. Then I saw her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, maybe a shadow or a patch of snow blowing across the road. But as I got closer, I saw her clearly. A woman standing on the shoulder, waving her arms. She was wearing this pale blue parka that almost blended into the snow, and her hair was dark, plastered to her face from the wind. She looked like she was freezing, shivering, stumbling, waving both hands like she was desperate for help. Now, I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff on these roads. Moose, stranded cars, people who've spun out. So naturally I slowed down. My headlights washed over her, and she covered her face with one arm like the brightness hurt her eyes. I stopped maybe 10 feet ahead of her and hit the hazards. When I looked back in the mirror, she was gone. At first I thought maybe she'd slipped or fallen. I opened my door, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out into the wind. The cold hit me so hard I could barely breathe. I shouted, "Ma'am, you okay?" But there was nothing. Just wind, snow, and the hum of the truck. I walked around to the back, shining my light across the road. No footprints, nothing but untouched snow. And that's when I felt it, this weird shift in the air. Like the sound dropped out, or the wind changed direction all at once. The hairs on my neck stood up. I climbed back into the cab, slammed the door, and just sat there for a minute, trying to shake it off. Maybe I imagined her. Maybe I was too tired seeing things in the storm. But then I saw something on the inside of the windshield, right there on the passenger side glass. A handprint, faint but definitely there, like someone had pressed their hand against it from the inside. The print was small, like a woman's, and the edges were fogged. The way breath leaves moisture on cold glass, I wiped it off, trying to convince myself I was being stupid. But a few seconds later the glass fogged up again, slowly, from the inside. That's when I heard it, the soft sound of breathing. It was coming from the passenger seat. I froze. My hand hovered over the gear shift, and I turned my head slowly, not sure if I even wanted to look. The seat was empty. But the air, it wasn't right. I could see the fog in the shape of small, slow exhales, as if someone invisible was sitting right there, breathing softly beside me. I whispered, "Jesus Christ," and the fog pattern stopped. For a second it felt like the cab got warmer. Then all at once it went ice cold again. I slammed the truck into gear and floored it, speeding through the snowstorm like a maniac. The trailer fishtailed, the tires screamed, but I didn't care. I just needed to get out of there. For the next few miles I kept glancing over at that seat. The fog would appear, disappear, then appear again, always faint, always slow, like someone breathing calmly, patiently. I tried to turn on the radio, but it only hissed static. Even my CB, which normally picks up truckers or weather reports, was dead silent. The only thing I could hear was the engine, and sometimes a soft creak from the passenger side, like the weight of someone shifting slightly in their seat. I must have driven like that for 20 minutes before I saw lights ahead, the rest stop at the base of the pass. It's not much. Just a little pull-off area with a few lampposts and a vending machine that's been dead since forever. But I pulled in fast, parked under the light and shut everything off. The silence hit me like a wall. The cab was still cold, but the fog on the passenger window had stopped. The seat looked empty again. I grabbed my thermos, opened the door and stepped outside to get some air. The snow had calmed down a little. Everything was quiet, too quiet. That's when I noticed something strange. There were footprints beside my truck, small ones, barefoot. They led from the side of the cab, where the passenger door was, and disappeared into the tree line. I just stood there, staring at them, my breath clouding in the light. I don't know how long I stayed like that before I climbed back into the cab, locked the doors, and refused to look at the passenger seat again. When morning came, I stopped at a diner near Girdwood to get coffee. I must have looked awful because the waitress asked if I was okay. I told her I'd just had a rough night on Turnagain Pass. She froze for a second, then nodded slowly, like she knew exactly what I was talking about. Before she walked away, she said something that made my stomach drop. "You saw her too, didn't you?" I blinked. "Who?" She leaned in a little and said, "The woman in the snow. You're not the first driver who's seen her. They say she died out there years ago. Car slid off the road in a storm. She was walking for help when she froze to death. People still stop for her sometimes." I didn't say anything after that, just stared at my coffee and tried not to think about the fog or the breathing or those barefoot tracks in the snow. But here's the part that still gets me. When I finally got back to Anchorage that afternoon, I did a quick walk around of the truck before heading home. And on the inside of the passenger side window, right where that handprint had been, there were streaks, like fingernail marks, thin, curved, dragging downward. My name's Eric, and I grew up in a small town called Gakona, right off the Tuck Cutoff Road in Alaska. If you've never been up that way, it's the kind of place where winters are long, nights are longer, and once the snow starts falling, it swallows everything in sound, color, time. When I was a kid, my dad used to joke that Alaska doesn't really have ghosts. It just has things the snow won't let go of. Back then, I thought he meant car wrecks or abandoned cabins. Now, I'm not so sure, because where I grew up, there's a sound that everyone around here knows. Locals call it the engine. It starts around December every year, usually after the first real blizzard. You'll be sitting in your house late at night. No wind, no noise, and suddenly you'll hear it. A faint rumble, low and steady, coming from the woods off the old highway. People say it sounds like a car engine idling somewhere out there in the trees. But if you go looking for it, it never gets closer. And it never fades. I first heard it when I was 16. It was a Saturday night, sometime around 1 in the morning. My buddy Nate and I were driving back from a small house party out near Slana. We were both dead tired and half frozen from the cold, just trying to make it home before the storm got worse. Snow was coming down thick, turning the headlights into white tunnels. The heater in Nate's old Ford barely worked, so the windows kept fogging up. We had the radio playing low, mostly to keep ourselves from falling asleep. Somewhere near mile marker 75, we both heard it, this steady humming noise coming through the static. Nate frowned and turned down the volume. "You hear that?" At first, I thought it was just the wind or something rattling in the engine, but the sound didn't match the rhythm of the truck. It wasn't coming from us. It was coming from outside. It sounded like another engine, maybe 50, 60 feet off the road. A low, slow idle, like someone sitting in their car with the heater running. But there were no headlights. No taillights. Nothing but darkness and snow. We slowed down, squinting through the windshield, trying to see if someone had slid off the road. But even with the high beams on, there was nothing there. "Maybe a snowmobile," I said. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't right. The sound was too deep, too steady. We pulled over. Nate rolled down his window and killed the engine. The noise was still there, that soft, rhythmic rumble somewhere just beyond the tree line. Then, as we sat listening, something changed. The sound revved, just once. A sharp growl of acceleration like someone pressing the gas. And then it went right back to idling. Nate looked at me, his breath fogging the cold air. "That's not normal," he whispered. He was right. We sat there maybe 30 seconds before the cold got unbearable. Then, out of nowhere, the rumble started to fade, but not away from us. It started circling. I swear to God, it moved. The sound shifted to the right side of the truck, then behind us. It was like something was driving in slow circles through the woods, without any lights, without any crunch of tires in the snow. Just the engine. Nate turned the key, and the truck roared back to life. He floored it, spinning snow behind us as we tore down the highway. We didn't say a word until we reached my house miles later. When I climbed out, I noticed something strange. A light dusting of snow melting off the passenger side door. Like heat had been radiating from that side of the truck. The next morning I asked my dad about it. He was sitting at the kitchen table reading the paper, coffee in hand, like he always was on Sundays. When I told him where it happened, near marker 75, he looked up slow, his expression suddenly serious. "You keep away from that stretch," he said, "especially at night." I asked him why, but he just folded the paper and said, "There's a wreck out there. Happened back in the 90s. Single car. Driver never made it." He didn't give details, but I asked around later that week. Turned out people remembered. In the winter of 1994, a guy named Bill Harker had been driving home from Tok during a storm. Somewhere near that same mile marker, he hit black ice and went off the road. The car flipped, landed upside down in a shallow ditch and caught fire. By the time someone found it the next morning, it was just twisted metal and ash. Nobody ever found the engine block. For a while, I tried not to think about it. But every winter, someone brought it up. The weird thing was, everyone in Gakona had a story about it. People who lived near the woods said they'd hear the sound late at night, always the same. A car idling steady and low. Sometimes they'd even smell exhaust in the air. One guy swore he saw light flickering through the trees, like from a pair of headlights, even though no one was out there. And every year, a few people would go looking for it, usually teenagers out to prove they weren't scared. But they always came back pale, shaken, sometimes swearing they'd gotten lost or turned around, even though the forest out there isn't that dense. One kid said he followed the sound for nearly half an hour, thinking he was getting closer. But when he turned around, his own footprints were gone. It was about 3 years later when I went back out there myself. I'd just graduated, and Nate and I were both working part-time at a gas station off the highway. We'd grown up hearing about the legend. Hell, we'd lived it, and figured we could finally put it to rest. It was late January, and the night was colder than I'd ever felt it. -30, maybe worse. Our breath froze in the air the second it left our mouths. We parked the truck at the pull-off near mile 75, turned off the headlights and waited. At first, there was nothing but the whisper of wind across the snow. Then, right around midnight, we heard it. That same low, steady hum. It wasn't far, maybe 100 yards into the trees. We grabbed flashlights and stepped out, boots crunching in the snow. The sound didn't fade this time. It got louder. I could feel it in my chest, that deep vibration of an engine working at idle. The air even smelled faintly of exhaust, sharp and metallic. We followed it deeper into the woods. Our lights caught nothing but trees and snow. No tracks, no tire marks, nothing. After maybe 10 minutes, Nate stopped walking. "You feel that?" he whispered. The ground was vibrating, faintly but steady, like something large was running nearby. Then came the rev loud this time, angry, like someone slammed their foot on the gas, holding it there until it screamed. The trees around us shook with the sound. We turned and bolted for the truck, running as fast as we could. I swear I could feel heat on my back as we ran, like standing too close to an open flame. When we finally burst out onto the road, Nate fumbled for the keys. The moment the headlights came on, the sound stopped. Just gone. The woods were silent again, snow drifting peacefully down like nothing had ever happened. We didn't speak the whole drive home, but the next morning, when I went to start my own car, the engine light came on. And when I opened the hood to check, the metal was warm, even though it hadn't run all night. After that night in the woods, Nate and I didn't talk about it for a while. We told people we'd gone looking for the engine and found nothing, but that was a lie. The truth was, we didn't know what we'd found, or if it had found us. For the first few weeks, I convinced myself it had just been the wind, maybe a snowmobile somewhere far off. But deep down I knew better, because the sound didn't stay in the woods. It followed me home. The first time it happened, I was alone in the garage. It was about 2 in the morning, and I couldn't sleep, so I went out to tinker with the old Chevy I'd been trying to restore. The radio was off, the house was quiet. Then I heard it, that same low, steady hum. I froze. The garage door was closed, But the sound was there, faint at first, like a car idling just outside on the driveway. I thought maybe Nate had stopped by, so I opened the door. Nothing. The air was perfectly still. No tire marks, no lights, just snow falling soft and slow. But when I stepped outside, the sound didn't fade. It got clearer. It was coming from the trees behind the house. That same rumble, pulsing slowly and even. Sometimes revving, then idling again. It felt wrong. Like something that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. I went back inside and locked every door. I didn't sleep that night. A few days later, Nate showed up at my place. He looked like hell. Dark circles under his eyes, jumpy as hell. He told me he'd been hearing it too. Outside your place? I asked. He shook his head. No, under my house. He lived in a small cabin on the edge of town, up on wooden stilts because of the snowmelt. He said he could hear the sound late at night, right below the floorboards, a constant rhythmic engine noise. Sometimes the boards vibrated. When he tried to check, it would stop. But the second he went back inside, it would start again. That's when I started thinking maybe this thing wasn't stuck to a place at all. Maybe it was stuck to us. One night, after another long shift at the gas station, I decided to take a detour, past mile 75. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe some part of me wanted proof that it was real. The snow was light, the sky clear enough to see the outline of the mountains. The road was empty, quiet except for the crunch of tires and the hum of my own engine. And then, the radio clicked on by itself. It wasn't on any station, just static. But under the static I could hear something, a rhythm, a soft pulsing sound that matched my heartbeat. I turned it off, but the sound didn't stop, because it wasn't coming from the radio. It was coming from the woods. The hum started faint, then grew louder. I slowed down. The snow on the road shimmered in my headlights. And for a second, I thought I saw something move through the trees. A dim orange glow, flickering. I pulled over and shut off my engine. The glow didn't fade, it looked like a firelight. Way out between the trees and in the middle of it, I could hear the low growl of an idling motor. I knew I should have driven away, but I didn't. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out, and started walking toward it. The snow was deep up to my knees. Every step crunched like glass. The smell hit first, that faint metallic tang of burned oil. Then came the heat. The closer I got, the warmer it became, and then I saw it, a car, or what was left of one. It was upside down, half buried in snow and ice. But the shape was unmistakable. An old sedan, the kind they built in the early 90s. The metal was blackened, warped from fire, and the windshield had melted into glassy shards. But the engine was running. I could see it, the faint shimmer of heat waves rising from the hood. The soft vibration of the metal. There was no key in the ignition. No sound of fuel, no smell of gas, just that low, impossible hum. And then, through the cracked glass of the driver's side window, I saw movement. Something shifted inside. A shape, hunched, blackened, still smoldering, had turned toward me. I couldn't see a face, not really, but I saw eyes. Bright orange, like the last coals of a dying fire. And then the engine revved, loud, violent. The trees shook. The snow blew off the branches in a wave. I turned and ran. I don't remember how I got back to my truck, but when I slammed the door shut, the sound cut off, like someone had yanked a plug. The headlights flickered once, twice, and then the truck started by itself. So I swear I didn't touch the key. I drove home without stopping, without breathing, without looking in the mirrors. The next day, Nate didn't come to work. I drove to his cabin, snow halfway up the steps, and knocked until my hands went numb. No answer. The front door was unlocked. Inside it was freezing. The air smelled like exhaust. In the middle of the living room, right beneath a vent in the floor, there was a dark patch of soot. The boards were burned straight through, and from underneath I could hear something faint, a hum. Slow, steady, like an engine. I called the sheriff. They searched the place for 2 days but never found Nate. His truck was still in the driveway, keys inside, battery dead. They said maybe he got lost in the snow. Maybe he wandered off. But I know what I heard. I moved away from Gakona not long after that. Got a job in Washington, tried to start over. For a while it worked. I told myself that whatever that thing was, it couldn't follow me that far. But then, one night last winter, I was driving home from a late shift. Long dark highway. Just me and the snow, And I heard it, that same low hum. It was faint at first under the sound of my tires. Then louder. The dashboard lights flickered. The air smelled faintly of gasoline. I turned off the radio. The hum didn't stop. It was coming from behind me. In the rearview mirror, I saw headlights. 2 bright beams cutting through the snow, following me at a perfect distance. Not too close, not too far. I thought maybe it was another driver. But the lights never changed. Never dimmed, never swerved, never closed the gap. After 10 minutes, I took an exit. The lights followed. I turned again down a smaller road. The lights followed. Finally, I pulled over to the side and stopped. The light stopped too, was about 30 feet behind me. I sat there, breathing hard, watching through the mirror. Then, slowly, the lights went out, but the hum kept going. I could feel it through the steering wheel, vibrating through the air. And then, from somewhere deep in that dark stretch of road behind me, came one long, sharp rev, loud enough to rattle my teeth. Then silence, no lights, no sound, just empty roads and falling snow. That was almost a year ago. Now some nights, when the wind dies down and everything's quiet, I still hear it. A faint engine noise somewhere outside. Never close, never far, just waiting. And I think about what my dad said, how Alaska doesn't have ghosts, just things the snow won't let go of. But I wasn't in Alaska the last time I heard it. And the snow had already melted. My name is Ryan, and I drive trucks for a living. Mostly up north, hauling fuel and supplies along Alaska's Dalton Highway. If you've never heard of it, that road is 600 miles of ice, mountains, and nothing. No towns, no gas stations, no real help if something goes wrong. Just snow and silence for hours. I've been doing this job for about 8 years now. Most nights it's peaceful. The hum of the engine, the crunch of ice under the tires, the CB chatter from other truckers. But every now and then, something happens out there that reminds you how small you really are. This happened in late February, maybe 4 winters ago. I was making a solo run from Fairbanks to Prudhoe Bay. It was around 9 p.m. when I passed Coldfoot, which is about halfway up. The sky was clear, the temperature was sitting somewhere around -30, and the northern lights were just starting to show, those green waves that shimmer like smoke. Dalton is a strange place at night. The silence out there feels thick. Even when your engine's running, it's like the world's muted. Sometimes you think you see things, shadows, shapes on the side of the road, but you get used to ignoring them. That night, though, I didn't ignore it. I'd been driving for maybe an hour past Coldfoot when I saw the first one, a man. He was standing on the shoulder, just past my high beams. Wearing a heavy brown parka, hood up, head down. No backpack, no car, no tracks leading up to him. Just standing there, facing the snowbank. I slowed down, partly out of instinct, partly because you don't usually see people walking this stretch of road in the dark. When I passed him, I caught a glimpse of his face, or I thought I did. His hood was pulled low, but the skin I saw was pale. Not just cold pale, the grey. His eyes didn't move. He didn't even blink. I thought maybe he was drunk or disoriented, maybe broke down somewhere nearby. I grabbed my radio and called out to any other drivers, asking if anyone had seen a stranded car around mile marker 216. No answer. After a minute, I told myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was a signpost or a trick of the lights, but about 20 minutes later I saw him again. Same parka. Same stance. Only this time he was on the other side of the road, standing there, head tilted toward the road like he was watching me. Now, I've driven the Dalton long enough to know what's normal and what isn't. There's no way he could have walked that far in that little time. Not in the cold, not without leaving tracks. My stomach dropped. I flicked my high beams, thinking maybe I'd catch some detail that would make sense of it. Maybe it was another driver wearing the same coat, maybe a reflection of something metal. But when the lights hit him, his head jerked up, and for a split second I swear I saw his face. The skin looked frostbitten, almost blistered. His mouth hung open like he was trying to say something, but nothing came out. Then he was gone. I mean gone. 1 second he was there, the next, empty snow. No footprints, no figure, just swirling frost where he'd been. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I didn't stop, had no chance in hell. I just kept driving, telling myself over and over that it had to be exhaustion, or headlights reflecting weird through the ice crystals. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in that truck. About an hour later, I pulled off near one of the old maintenance lots, just a flat stretch where the state sometimes leaves equipment. I needed to check my chains and get some air. The wind had picked up, howling across the plain, and the snow was drifting again. I stepped out, light in hand, and walked around the rig. Everything looked fine. Tires, lights, fuel lines. But when I got to the back, something caught my eye. Footprints, single sets of them leading away from the side of the trailer. They were deep. Not animal prints, not mine. Human. The weird part? They didn't start at the road. They started right beside my truck, like someone had been standing there, pressed up against the side of it. I swung my flashlight around fast. The beam cut across the snow, catching nothing but wind and darkness. Still, I could have sworn I heard something, like a faint scrape on the metal siding. I climbed back into the cab, locked the doors, and cranked the heat. My hands were shaking. I don't scare easy, but something about this felt wrong. I radioed another driver I knew, a guy named Al who was about 40 miles ahead of me. Told him what I'd seen, trying to sound casual about it. He laughed. "Man, you've been listening to too many ghost stories," he said. "Maybe. Just didn't feel right," I told him. Al paused for a moment, then said, "Funny thing, and about 10 minutes back I thought I saw someone too, standing right in the lane. Almost hit the guy. Brown coat, I think." That made my stomach twist. We talked for a minute more, then Al said he'd wait up for me at the next pump station so we could convoy for a bit. I agreed and hung up, but I never made it there. It must have been 15 minutes later when I noticed something in the mirror. A shape. Faint. At first, just a blur of movement behind the trailer, keeping pace. I leaned forward, squinting. It looked like someone was running. The truck was doing 50. I blinked, leaned closer, and the moment I did, my dash lights flickered. The temperature gauge started to dip, like the engine was losing heat. Then in the rearview mirror I saw him, the same man in the brown parka, hanging onto the rear ladder of the trailer. At first I thought maybe I was losing it, but then his head turned and I saw that face again, pale, frostbitten, lips moving like he was whispering something I couldn't hear. I slammed the brakes. The rig shuddered, tires screeching across the ice. I jumped out with my flashlight, heart pounding. The snow behind the trailer was smooth, no footprints, nobody, nothing. Just that same smell, cold metal and diesel, and the faintest sound, like a whisper swallowed by the wind. I didn't sleep that night, didn't even pull over again. Around 4 a.m. I finally saw Al's truck parked at the pump station. The lights were off, but the engine was idling. I pulled up behind him, relieved to see another person. When I climbed out, I noticed Al's door was wide open. "Al?" I called out. No answer. The wind whipped through the open cab, carrying snow inside. The radio was hissing with static. I stepped up, shining my light inside. The cab was empty. No blood. No struggle. Just his thermos on the seat, coffee still steaming. I was about to reach for the radio when I heard it again. That sound. The faint hum of an engine in the distance. Coming from the highway behind me. It was slow, steady, and getting louder. When I turned around, I saw headlights. 2 faint white beams drifting toward me through the falling snow. At first, I thought maybe another truck was coming in. But the way the lights moved wasn't right. They weren't bouncing like they should have been on rough ice. They just floated, gliding in perfect silence. Then they flickered once, twice, and went dark. The only thing left was the hum, that low, steady drone, like an engine running somewhere far away, but not too far. And for the first time that night, I realized how completely alone I was. I sat in Al's truck until sunrise. When the daylight finally came, I called it in. State troopers searched the area, but they didn't find him. No tracks, no signs of a crash. Just his truck, engine dead, coffee frozen solid. They said maybe he wandered off. Maybe the cold got him. But I've seen what the cold does to people. It doesn't make them vanish. That was 4 years ago, and I swear, every winter since, whenever I drive that same route, I still see him, the man in the brown parka, sometimes just standing at the edge of my headlights, sometimes farther down the road. Once, and this is the part that really gets me, once I saw him in my mirror, not outside, in the back seat. After that night, I didn't tell anyone the full story. The company wrote it off as a missing driver case. The official report said Al probably wandered off and froze to death, but they never found a body. They searched for 3 days before giving up. I tried to go back to normal. I really did. But something about that stretch of road, it stayed with me. You can call it paranoia or trauma, or whatever label helps you sleep. But ever since then, every time I drive the Dalton, I feel watched. I switched to daytime runs for a while. Told dispatch I didn't like doing overnights anymore. They laughed but didn't ask questions. A lot of the old drivers don't do nights either. Maybe they've seen things too, but you can't avoid the dark forever up there. Winter in Alaska means darkness comes early and leaves late. It was about 6 months later, in December, when I finally took another night route. The roads were clean, weather clear. I told myself it'd be fine. I made it almost to the same area near Coldfoot when I saw it again, a figure standing by the road, same parka, same slouched posture, only this time he was facing me. I hit the brakes so hard the tires screamed. My headlights caught him full on. His hood was down this time. I saw his face clearly. It wasn't just frostbitten, it was burned with cold. Lips split, skin cracked. His eyes looked empty, like he'd been staring into the snow for decades. I blinked and he was gone. Just gone, no footsteps, no shadow. Just the hiss of the wind over the road. I floored it. I don't even remember the next 30 miles. I just remember gripping the wheel, trying not to look at the mirrors, because that's how it starts. First you see him outside, then you see him behind you. When I finally pulled into the rest stop near the Yukon River crossing, I sat there for a long time. The heater was running and I kept telling myself, "You're tired." It's nothing, but something was wrong. The air in the cab felt heavy, like the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in seconds. My breath fogged in front of me. The windshield frosted over, even with the defroster on full. Then I noticed the rear-view mirror again. It was tilted slightly downward, not enough for me to have hit it, just enough that I could see the back seat. At first, I thought it was a shadow from the cargo light outside, but then it moved, a face, half in darkness, half visible in the mirror, the same grey skin, the same hollow eyes. He was sitting directly behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My whole body locked up. Every instinct screamed, "Don't look." For what felt like forever, neither of us moved. The cab was silent except for the low hum of the idling engine. Then I heard breathing, shallow, wet, right behind my ear. My hand hovered over the ignition, but I couldn't bring myself to shut it off, because part of me was terrified of what would happen if the engine stopped, like the sound was the only thing keeping whatever that was from getting closer. Finally, I slammed the gas. The rig lurched forward, tires spinning over the ice. I didn't stop again until I hit Dead Horse at dawn. When I stepped out, the cab was warm again, empty, but there were marks. On the inside of the rear window, faint smudges, like handprints pressed into fog. I tried to tell myself it was condensation. Maybe I'd touched the glass earlier. But the prints were too big, too wide apart. And they weren't from my side of the seat. That's when I realized. The smell, cold diesel and something else underneath. Like rot, faint and wet, coming from the vents. I told the yard manager I was done driving the Dalton. He didn't argue. Just gave me a look and said, "A lot of guys say that after their first few winters." But later, when we were standing by the vending machine, he leaned closer and said quietly, "You saw him, didn't you?" I froze. "What?" He nodded. "The hitchhiker. Apparently this isn't new. According to him, the first reports came sometime in the late 80s. Truckers, tourists, even pipeline workers. All saying they'd seen a man walking Dalton in a brown parka. Always alone. Always disappearing before anyone could stop. Some said he was the spirit of a driver who froze to death after breaking down out there decades ago. Others said he was something older, something that became human once people started dying on that road. I didn't know what to believe. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever he wasn't gone. 3 months later, I was back in Anchorage. I'd switched routes, running shorter deliveries between Palmer and Wasilla. Normal life again. Then one morning, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of an engine outside my house. At first, I thought maybe a snowplow had come early. But when I looked out the window, the street was empty. No lights. No movement. Just that steady hum of an idling diesel engine, the same sound my rig made. I went outside, still half asleep, breath fogging in the air. The sound seemed to come from somewhere down the block. I followed it barefoot in the snow, maybe 20-30 yards, and then it stopped, dead silent. I turned to head back, and that's when I saw the footprints, 2 sets. Mine and another set walking parallel to them. They stopped about 6 feet away from where I was standing. There was no one there. But for a second I could feel it, that same pressure in the air, that drop in temperature, the kind that makes your breath catch before you even realize you're scared. I ran back inside and locked the door. The sound didn't come back that night, but every winter since. So I hear it. Not every night, not even every week, just once or twice a year. Always around 3 a.m. Always when the snow's falling. That low hum of an engine idling somewhere nearby, and sometimes, when I look out the window, I catch movement on the far side of the street. A man in a brown parka, head down, hands at his sides, just standing there in the snow. I don't tell this story to scare anyone. I tell it because that road, the Dalton Highway, has taken more people than anyone really talks about. If you ever drive it at night and you see someone on the shoulder waving you down, do yourself a favor. Don't stop, because sometimes the ones who need help aren't the ones still living. And if you ever see a man in a brown parka in your mirror, don't look away, because the moment you blink, he moves closer. My name's Ben, and I've been traveling across Alaska for the past few years. I do odd jobs, maintenance work, sometimes deliveries when I can find them. It's not a glamorous life, but I like the solitude. I like the cold. It keeps people honest, you know? This story happened 2 winters ago, right before Christmas. I was driving from Anchorage to Glen Allen to drop off some equipment for a buddy. The trip's only a few hours if the weather's good, but it was one of those nights where the snow came down thick, the kind that swallows headlights whole. I left late, which was mistake number 1. Around 9 p.m., somewhere past Eagle River, I realized I'd missed the last gas station. The road was slick, visibility low, and my GPS had gone haywire about 20 minutes earlier. It kept freezing and rerouting like it couldn't find a signal. At one point, I swear I heard something metallic hit the underside of my truck. I pulled over, figuring I'd thrown a chain or picked up debris. When I stepped out, the silence hit me, that kind of deep, hollow quiet you only get in the dead of Alaskan winter. The snow was falling straight down, no wind, no sound, except the soft hiss of it landing on the hood. I checked underneath. Nothing. Just clean ice and snow. When I climbed back in, the GPS finally loaded again, showing a new route. It said there was a shortcut that would reconnect me to the Glen Highway faster. A side road that curved east through something called Eagle's Rest. That name didn't ring a bell. I'd been up and down those routes for years and never heard of any Eagle's Rest, but I was tired, low on fuel, and the detour looked shorter by at least 40 minutes, so I took it. At first, it looked normal, a 2-lane road winding through dense spruce forest. No signs, no mile markers, just snow piling up on the trees like powdered sugar. But the farther I went, the stranger it felt. My headlights caught no reflectors. The road didn't seem plowed recently, yet my tires rolled smooth, no resistance. Like I wasn't even touching the ground. Then, after about 15 minutes, I saw lights ahead. A town, small, tucked between 2 slopes, glowing faintly through the snow. It looked peaceful, almost like something out of a Christmas postcard. Rows of little houses with yellow light glowing behind curtains. Street lamps dusted with snow. A gas station on the corner. Even what looked like a diner with a neon sign buzzing faintly in the dark. For a moment, I felt pure relief. I figured maybe this was one of those tiny communities that doesn't even show up on GPS. I drove in slow, crunching over snow, looking for a sign or population marker. Nothing. Just a simple wooden arch over the road that said, "Welcome to Eagle's Rest." The letters looked hand-painted, chipped from years of frost. I pulled up near the gas station. The lights were on, the pumps were lit, but there was no one around. No cars, no footprints, not even tire tracks leading in or out. Still, I figured maybe everyone was asleep. It was late, after all. I parked and went to knock on the glass door. Inside, the shelves were stocked. Snacks, oil, even a little radio playing soft static. But no Clark. I waited a minute, then grabbed the handle. It opened without resistance. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoed. The air inside was cold. Not freezing, but colder than it should have been for a place that had its lights on. I stepped behind the counter, looking for a note or something. There was a half-drunk cup of coffee sitting next to the register. Steam had frozen in a thin crust across the top. That's when I started to feel it, that heaviness in the air. Like the silence itself was thick. My heartbeat sounded too loud. I turned to leave. And that's when I saw the window, across the glass. My truck sat under the station light, idling softly. And next to it, on the far side of the pump, stood someone. At first, I thought it was my reflection. Same jacket, same stance. But then it tilted its head slightly like it was listening. I blinked, and it was gone, just my truck again, engine humming, exhaust curling into the snow. I didn't waste another second. I got back in, threw it in reverse, and backed out onto the road. The town stretched farther than I thought. As I drove, I passed more houses, all lit up, all perfect, but something about them was wrong. Every curtain was drawn exactly the same. Every porch light glowed the same shade of amber. Even the snow looked undisturbed, no footprints, no shovel marks, no sign of life. I slowed near what looked like the town center, a wide circle with a frozen fountain in the middle. The ice inside glowed faintly from a streetlight overhead, and I could see shapes under the surface. Not clear enough to tell what, but long, thin shapes that looked almost like... No. I told myself it was debris, probably pipes. I circled once, found no movement, no noise, and decided to leave. I'd seen enough. That's when the GPS cut out completely, screen black. No signal. And when I looked up, the road I came in on wasn't there anymore. I swear to God, it was just gone. In its place was a snowbank stretching into the trees. No sign of the tire tracks I'd just made minutes earlier. I tried turning around, thinking maybe I'd taken a wrong street. But every direction led deeper into identical rows of houses. Every street looked the same. And when I passed the same frozen fountain again, my stomach dropped. I hadn't turned, I was driving straight. But somehow I'd looped back by then. I was panicking. My fuel was low, the radio was dead, and the snow was getting thicker. I spotted the diner again. The same neon sign flickering red through the storm. I pulled up in front of it, headlights washing over the windows. Inside, everything looked untouched. Coffee cups lined the counter, napkin holders polished, even a jukebox glowing in the corner. But there were no people. Not one. And when I killed the engine, the silence that followed was absolute. That was the first moment I realized I hadn't heard a single sound since I'd entered that town. Not wind, not dogs, not even the hum of power lines, just my own breathing. I sat there for a long time, gripping the wheel, trying to convince myself I wasn't dreaming. Then, through the falling snow, I saw movement. A curtain in one of the nearby houses pulled back just a few inches. Someone was watching me. I turned the ignition again, desperate to get out, but the truck sputtered. Once, twice, and then died, lights off. Engine silent. That's when I saw it, reflected faintly in the diner window across the street. A figure standing behind my truck, tall still, head slightly tilted, the same shape I'd seen at the gas station. I didn't turn around. I couldn't, because at that moment the streetlights around me started to flicker one by one, until only the diner sign remained, buzzing faintly in the darkness. Then even that went out, and I was left in the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. I don't know how long I sat there after the lights went out. Maybe a minute, maybe an hour. The cold had started creeping in through the seams of the door, frosting over the inside of the windshield. My breath came out in quick clouds, and all I could think about was not turning around. I could feel that thing behind my truck. Not like a person watching, more like something waiting for me to acknowledge it. I finally forced myself to move. My hands were shaking as I reached for the glove box, where I kept a flashlight and a small wrench. The second I opened it, the noise of the latch echoed way too loud in the silence. I waited, holding my breath, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No crunching snow. Just stillness. I took the flashlight and flicked it on. The beam was weak, flickering like the batteries were half dead. I swallowed hard, and finally turned to look through the rear window. There was nothing there, just the road, pale and flat under the snow. My truck bed was covered in white, untouched. But my side mirrors, both of them were tilted downward, facing the ground. I hadn't done that. That broke me. I yanked the handle and got out, boots sinking into the snow with a muffled crunch. I wasn't thinking anymore, just moving, desperate to find someone, anyone. The diner was closest, so I went for it, half slipping as I climbed the steps and yanked open the glass door. The bell above the door chimed weakly, and the smell hit me first, stale coffee and something faintly metallic. Like old pennies. The lights inside flickered once, buzzing overhead. "Hello?" I called out. My voice cracked. "Anyone here?" Nothing. I stepped further inside, my boots leaving the first tracks on that perfect floor. Every booth looked like someone had just gotten up. Mugs half full, plates with crumbs. A jukebox still humming faintly in the corner, though no music played. There was a layer of frost across the countertop. Not dust. Frost. I ran my gloved hand across it, and the pattern underneath stopped me cold. Someone had drawn something into the ice. A word. Leave. The letters were rough, scrawled by hand, half melted but still clear. I backed away fast, bumping into a chair. It screeched across the tile, and the sound seemed to wake the whole place up. The jukebox lights blinked once. The bulbs above me dimmed, then flared white for a second. And in that brief flash, I saw movement outside the window. A figure walking, no gliding, down the center of the street. Slow, deliberate steps. Too slow to be normal. I killed my flashlight, ducked behind the counter, and peeked through a crack near the base of the window. The thing was moving past my truck now. It wore what looked like an old winter coat, but its head. It wasn't right. The proportions were off. Too long, too narrow, like it had stretched somehow. I watched as it stopped in front of the diner door. For a moment I thought it was staring straight at me through the glass. Then it tilted its head, just like before, and the lights went out again. The darkness this time was total, the kind that swallows sound and sense. I couldn't hear the wind or my heartbeat, just a dull hum like the air itself was vibrating. I crouched there, trying not to breathe, when I heard the faintest scrape against the door. Metal against glass, then another, like fingertips dragging slowly down. That sound grew sharper, harder, like nails on a chalkboard. Then silence. I waited. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. Finally I stood, using the counter for balance, and looked out the window again. The street was empty. The figure was gone. My truck, though, it was different. Every window was fogged from the inside. I turned back toward the rear of the diner, thinking maybe I could find a back exit. My flashlight caught something on the wall. An old corkboard filled with newspaper clippings, some yellowed and curling at the corners. At first, I thought they were local ads, missing pets, bake sales, that kind of thing. But as I got closer, I saw the dates, different years, but all with the same headline: Eagle's Rest vanishes in blizzard, town declared lost. There were photos too, the same fountain, the same diner, even the same wooden welcome arch. Every few decades, the same article, the same disappearance. My stomach turned to ice. I backed away, shaking my head, whispering to myself, no, 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 no. That's when the jukebox behind me came to life. A single song started playing, warped and broken, like it was underwater. The voice was soft, a woman singing something about coming home, and over it, beneath the static, I heard whispers. Not words exactly, more like the rhythm of speech. Layers of voices, hushed and urgent, coming from everywhere. I bolted for the back door, slammed my shoulder into it. It burst open with a crack, snow spilling in. I stumbled into the alley behind the diner. The snow there was deeper, untouched, and there on the ground were footprints, not mine. They led toward the edge of town. I followed them without thinking, flashlight trembling in my hand. Each step crunched louder than it should have. My breath came in ragged gasps, fogging up the beam of light. After a few minutes, the prints ended. Just stopped, right at the edge of the forest. Beyond that, nothing but black trees and falling snow. I turned around, and my flashlight caught something in the distance. The diner was gone. The road behind me, the houses, even the fountain, all of it had faded into a grey haze. It was like the town itself was disappearing, and the only thing left standing was my truck, still sitting in the middle of the street, or what was left of it. The paint looked dull and rusted, like it had been sitting there for decades. The tires were half buried in ice. I ran toward it, heart pounding, slipping on the snow. I threw open the driver's side door. It groaned like old wood. Inside, everything was covered in frost. My backpack, my phone, the keys in the ignition, all frozen solid, but the worst part, the windshield wasn't fogged anymore. There were handprints, dozens of them, pressed from the inside. I don't remember how I got out of there. I remember running, though, down a hill through trees until I hit a frozen river. I followed it for what felt like hours until I saw headlights in the distance. A trucker found me sometime before dawn. Said I was wandering near the highway, waving my arms covered in frost. He thought I'd crashed somewhere and was delirious. He radioed for help. Got me to a hospital in Anchorage. When the cops questioned me, I told them about the town, the diner, the gas station, the fountain. One of them looked at the other like I'd lost it. Then he said something I'll never forget. Eagle's Rest was evacuated in 1963. Avalanche wiped it out. There's nothing out there anymore. I insisted they check. They did. Sent a team. They found my tire tracks leading off the main road. They even found where I'd pulled over. But there was nothing else. No town, no diner, no buildings, just snow. They said maybe I hallucinated it. Hypothermia, exhaustion, whatever. But a week later, when I went to collect my things from the impound lot, the officer who found my truck looked uneasy. He handed me the keys and said quietly, "You might want to see this for yourself." He led me to the truck. It was in perfect condition, except for one thing. Across the inside of the windshield, faintly traced into the frost, were 3 words, "See you soon." That was 2 years ago. I still drive those roads sometimes. I tell myself it was all in my head, that I was tired, that the storm messed with my mind. But sometimes late at night when the snow starts to fall just right, I swear I see lights far off through the trees, a faint glow, like a little town, waiting just beyond the edge of the map. And if I listen close enough, I can almost hear a jukebox playing. My name's Trevor, and I grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska. If you've ever been up here, you know that winter doesn't end so much as it just pauses before it starts again. Everything stays frozen. The air, the roads, even the people. But for those of us who live here, you get used to it. You find ways to have fun with the cold. Ice fishing, snowmobiling, bonfires by frozen rivers. It's all part of the deal. Back in 2019, me and my 3 friends, Jake, Ryan, and Noah, decided to take a weekend trip out to Nenana River Crossing, just outside the little town of Nenana. It's about an hour and a half southwest of Fairbanks, known mostly for its old railway bridge and the Ice Classic, where people bet on when the river ice will finally break each spring. We weren't there for gambling, though. We wanted to camp by the river, grill some food, and maybe take photos of the bridge at night. Ryan had just bought this beat-up '98 Ford F-250, and he wouldn't stop talking about how it handled better than a snowcat. So we loaded up the truck with sleeping bags, propane tanks, and enough junk food to survive a blizzard. We left around 3 p.m., aiming to set up before dark. The sky was already that washed-out gray that means the sun's about to quit for the day, and the temperature kept dropping as we drove. The highway was quiet, just us, some scattered cabins, and endless rows of snow-covered spruce trees. When we finally reached the crossing, it was around 5:30. The bridge loomed in the distance, a massive steel structure stretching over the frozen river, old and blackened by time. There was a small pull-off area nearby, so we parked there and unpacked. The snow crunched under our boots, deep and dry like powdered glass. The air felt heavier by the river, almost muffled, like sound didn't travel the same way there. "Creepy spot," Noah muttered as he dragged out a cooler. "You sure this is allowed?" Jake grinned. "We're not doing anything illegal. We're just freezing our asses off for fun." We set up a small tent near the truck, built a fire and got some burgers going. For a while it was perfect. Just friends laughing, drinking cheap beer and joking around. The bridge glowed faintly under the moonlight, and we could hear the faint groan of the ice shifting beneath us. It wasn't until around 11 p.m. that things started to feel off. The wind picked up first. It wasn't a normal gust. It came in sharp bursts that made the tent walls snap and shudder. Every time it hit, it carried this low whistle like someone trying to talk through their teeth. Then out of nowhere, Ryan said, "Do you guys smell that?" I sniffed. At first I thought it was just the campfire, but it wasn't. It was metallic, almost like rust and wet dirt. Jake frowned. "Smells like blood." We all looked at each other for a second, then laughed it off. None of us wanted to admit it was creeping us out. By midnight, the fire had burned low and the wind had gotten stronger. Ryan and Noah turned in first, while Jake and I sat in the truck to warm up. We left the engine running for a bit, The heater humming softly. You hear that? Jake said, suddenly lowering the music. I turned off the radio. For a second, there was only silence. Then I heard it, a faint scratching noise. It was coming from underneath the truck. At first, I figured maybe an animal had crawled under there. We'd seen foxes and rabbits earlier in the evening. But this wasn't the quick skittering of paws. It was slow, deliberate, like claws dragging across metal. Jake leaned down and peered out the window. "Probably ice scraping the undercarriage," he said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. I reached for the flashlight. "I'll check." Before I could step out, the scratching stopped. The silence afterward was almost worse. Jake turned up the heater again and muttered, "Whatever." "It's fine." We didn't talk much after that. I remember watching the frost spread along the edges of the windshield, and for some reason, it made me uneasy, like something was breathing against the glass from the outside. Eventually, I shut off the engine and climbed into the tent beside Ryan and Noah. The ground was freezing, even through the sleeping bags. I could still hear the wind outside whistling through the bridge's steel beams. That's when I heard it again. The scratching. Only this time, it wasn't under the truck. It was circling the tent, soft at first, then louder, a dragging sound like nails scraping through the snow. Noah stirred beside me. "You hear that?" he whispered. Before I could answer, something tapped against the tent wall. 3 times, slow Jake's voice came from outside, shaky. "Hey, did one of you just come out here?" I froze. All 3 of us were still inside. "No," I said quietly. There was a pause. Then Jake's voice again, smaller this time. "There's something by the truck." Ryan unzipped the tent halfway and poked his head out with a flashlight. The beam cut through the snow and landed on the truck about 10 feet away. At first, nothing seemed wrong, just the vehicle half covered in frost. But then near the back wheel we saw movement. Something dark slid out of view low to the ground. Ryan swore and zipped the tent back up. Nope, not dealing with that. We sat there in silence, clutching the flashlight, listening. The wind howled, the bridge groaned, and somewhere out there something moved. When the sound came again, it wasn't scratching this time. It was breathing, deep, wet breaths right outside the tent wall. We didn't move, didn't speak, just wait. After what felt like forever, the breathing faded. The wind died down and the air went still again. No one slept after that. When dawn finally came, the light hit the tent fabric and woke us all up at once. We scrambled outside, our breath puffing in the cold air, half expecting to find tracks or torn-up gear. At first glance, everything looked normal. The fire pit was half buried in snow. The bridge loomed quietly above, and the truck sat where we'd left it. Then Ryan pointed. "What the hell is that?" The tires. All 4 of them were shredded with deep gouges, long curved marks that looked like they'd been carved by something with claws. We circled the truck in disbelief. The marks went around the doors too, along the edges of the bed, even across the tailgate. There were no animal prints in the snow. Nothing to show what had done it. Jake crouched near one of the tires and ran his finger along a groove. "This isn't from a knife or tool," he said. "Whatever did this?" It dug in deep. The smell was still there, faint but unmistakable, that metallic tang of rust and blood. Noah climbed into the cab to start the truck. The engine sputtered, coughed once, and died. He tried again. Nothing. That's when we heard it, from under the bridge, a sound like metal grinding against rock, echoing from somewhere deep below the frozen river. Ryan turned slowly toward the bridge. "You guys hear that?" Jake's face went pale. "It's coming from under the ice." We all stood there, listening. The noise came again, longer this time. A low, hollow scrape that vibrated through the air. Then faintly something else followed. A thud, like something heavy hitting the underside of the ice. Once, then again, and then we saw it. A ripple under the frozen surface of the river, spreading slowly toward the bridge supports. We backed away, every instinct screaming to run, but the truck wouldn't start, and the nearest road was half a mile uphill. Jake looked at me, eyes wide. "Tell me that's just the current," he whispered. But the river was frozen solid, and the ripple was moving against the flow. For a long moment, none of us moved. The ripple under the ice widened, spreading across the river like something massive was shifting beneath the surface. The air had gone still again, the kind of stillness that presses against your eardrums and makes your chest tight. Then that low grinding sound returned, longer this time, followed by another deep, hollow thud. Noah was the first to speak, his voice thin and trembling. That's not the current. There's something alive down there." Jake shook his head, stepping back toward the truck. No way. Maybe the ice is cracking. Temperature change or pressure or something. He was trying to sound logical, but his voice was shaking. He didn't even believe in himself. Ryan climbed up onto the tailgate, scanning the river with the binoculars he'd brought for the trip. His hands were trembling so badly he could barely keep them steady. "Guys," he whispered, "I can see it. There's something moving under there. Big, like really big." I grabbed the binoculars from him and pressed them to my eyes. The ice was thick, cloudy, and filled with frozen air bubbles, but I saw something dark and long slithering through the shadowed current below. It moved in short, jerky bursts, like it was crawling or dragging itself. Every few seconds it would stop, and the ice would groan from the pressure beneath it. A gust of wind came out of nowhere, strong enough to scatter our camping gear. The bridge above us let out a long metallic wail as the wind cut through its beams. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath. "Okay," Ryan said, pacing. "We're packing up. We walk. We can make it to the main road in, 20 minutes? Maybe someone will drive by." I nodded, even though my stomach was tight with dread. Leaving the truck felt wrong, but staying felt worse. Noah grabbed his pack and started toward the hill. Jake hesitated, glancing back at the river. Then the ice cracked. It wasn't a small sound, and it was sharp, violent, like a gunshot echoing across the valley. We all turned toward the bridge, just in time to see a fracture race down the center of the river, cutting straight toward the bank where we'd camped. Ryan shouted, "Move!" We ran. Snow flew around our legs as we scrambled up the slope, boots slipping on the ice. Behind us, the crack split wide open with a deep booming noise that rattled through my chest. I turned just enough to see the frozen surface sag inward, and something burst through it. For a split second, I saw what looked like a dark, slick mass, the size of a small car, twisting and thrashing in the freezing air. I couldn't make out any clear shape, no face or limbs, just this writhing, glistening form that shouldn't have been alive. Then it dropped back beneath the ice with a splash that sent shards flying across the riverbank. We didn't stop running until we reached the top of the hill, gasping for breath, our bodies shaking from cold and fear. From up there, we could see the bridge stretching over the water, black against the grey sky. The river had gone still again, like nothing had happened. Jake was the first to break the silence. "We can't leave the truck," he said, his breath coming in clouds. "That's everything we've got. Food, supplies, keys. Forget the truck." Ryan snapped, "Did you see that thing?" But Jake was already heading back down the hill. I grabbed his arm, but he yanked free. "If we get stuck out here, we'll freeze to death." "I'm not dying because you're scared of some damn fish." Noah shouted after him, "Jake, don't!" He didn't listen. He made it halfway down when the ice groaned again, louder this time. Then something slammed against the bridge support so hard that snow fell from the beams. Jake froze mid-step. We all heard it. A deep, rhythmic scraping sound like claws dragging across metal. It echoed up through the bridge, bouncing between the girders. Then a wet, slapping noise followed, moving along the underside of the structure toward where Jake stood. "Run," I yelled, but he didn't move. He was staring at the water, his face pale. I followed his gaze and saw it, the surface of the ice rippling directly below him. He was moving fast, straight for the bank. "Jake!" He turned to run, but his boots slipped. He hit the ground hard, and the next second the ice under him exploded. A geyser of freezing water shot up, followed by something black and long wrapping around his leg and yanking him downward. He screamed, clawing at the snow, but the thing dragged him toward the hole. We ran toward him, but before we could reach him, he was gone. Just gone, pulled under so fast it didn't seem real. The hole sealed almost instantly with slush and ice, leaving nothing but a jagged circle of broken frost. Noah fell to his knees, shouting Jake's name. Ryan pulled him back, screaming, "We have to go." "It's not over." The river was moving again now, the frozen surface buckling, waves of pressure rolling beneath it. Cracks spread outward, popping like gunfire. The bridge groaned louder than ever, metal shrieking as something huge scraped along its underside. We ran. I don't even remember how. My body moved on instinct. Every step felt like it could be my last. I didn't look back until we reached the tree line. From there I saw the bridge. The water beneath it was boiling. Not literally, but churning, rising and falling like the ice was breathing. Then slowly, something dark and massive rose from the center. It wasn't solid. It looked like a swarm of something, liquid, black and shifting. And through the mist and snow I could see dozens of long, thin shapes unfurling beneath it, slapping against the ice. We ran until the bridge disappeared from view. Hours later, we finally stumbled onto the main road. Ryan flagged down a snowplow, and the driver radioed for help. By the time rescue teams arrived, we were half frozen and barely coherent. They searched for Jake. They found the campsite, the torn-up snow, and the truck, still there, engine dead, tires shredded. But there was no sign of Jake. The divers refused to go down after dark, so they waited until morning. When they did, they said visibility was 0. The current too strong, the water too murky. All they pulled up was Jake's left boot, torn clean through like something had chewed it apart. They told us it was probably a freak accident. Maybe Jake fell in, got caught under the ice. That's what we told his parents too. But all of us, me, Ryan, and Noah, we knew what we saw. That night when I finally got home, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that sound, the scraping under the truck, the deep, heavy breaths by the tent. 2 weeks later, Ryan called me. His voice was shaking. He said he'd gone back to Nenana with his uncle, who worked for the railroad. They had to inspect the bridge before the spring thaw. He told me that when they were standing on the bridge, his uncle pointed at something near the support beams. There were long, fresh gouges in the steel, deep enough to bend the metal, and right beneath them, frozen in the river ice, was a shape. It wasn't clear. Just a dark outline pressed against the underside of the ice, but Ryan swore he saw it move. Just once. He hasn't gone back since. None of us have. Even now, years later, I still dream about it. That sound beneath the truck, that smell of blood in the snow, and sometimes, when the wind howls just right outside my house, I swear I can hear it again. That long, slow scratching, like something waiting just below the surface, ready to crawl out. My name's Travis, and I've been driving trucks for nearly 20 years. You learn a few things on the road that long. How to sleep in a cab without freezing, how to eat gas station food without dying, and, most importantly, how to keep your mind busy during those long, empty stretches of highway. That's why I always kept my CB radio on. Some guys use Spotify or audiobooks, but for me the static-filled chatter of truckers was company. It made the road feel less lonely. This happened in late February, somewhere along the Dalton Highway in Alaska. If you've never driven it, it's not really a highway. It's a frozen spine of gravel and ice that cuts through the wilderness. There are no lights, no towns, and in some stretches, no signal for hundreds of miles. The only thing you hear at night is the wind, the tires grinding against the frost, and your own thoughts echoing back at you. That night, I was hauling a load of diesel fuel north, heading toward a mining station near Coldfoot. It was close to midnight. The sky was a dark purple haze, and the temperature outside had dropped below -30. My dashboard lights glowed a faint green. The CB was tuned to channel 19, the usual trucker frequency, though I hadn't heard a voice in almost 2 hours. I remember I was starting to drift, not asleep, just lost in the rhythm of the drive, when I heard it. A faint crackle came through the radio, followed by static. Then a voice, distant and trembling. Hello? Can anyone hear me? It was a woman. Her tone was panicked but quiet, like she was trying not to make too much noise. I reached for the mic. Copy that. This is a northbound rig on the Dalton. You all right, ma'am? You sound cold as hell out there. For a few seconds, nothing. Just static. Then the voice again, clearer this time, though her words sounded strange. Please help me. I'm lost. I sat up straighter, glancing at my GPS. Nothing around but wilderness for 50 miles in either direction. I thumbed the mic again. Copy that. What's your 20? Where are you located, over? I'm by the bridge. My car broke down, please. Someone help me. I frowned. Bridge? Which bridge, ma'am? There's a few up here. Can you give me a route number or any signs nearby? But she didn't answer that. The radio hissed, then her voice came through again. The exact same words, same tone, same inflection. I'm by the bridge. My car broke down, please. Someone help me. A chill ran down my back. I tried another frequency. Channel 17, static, then faintly her voice again. Please. Someone help me. Same tone. Same pauses. I switched to channel 15, then 21, same thing. Her voice was bleeding through every frequency, like it was chasing me through the airwaves. My knuckles tightened around the wheel. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe some kind of radio bleed over. It happens when signals bounce weird off the atmosphere. Still, something about her voice didn't sit right. It sounded too close, like she was whispering directly into my ear. After a few minutes, I spotted the sign for the Alaskan River Bridge coming up. The road curved sharply there, and a long, low bridge stretched over a frozen gorge. My headlights cut through the dark, bouncing off the guardrails and patches of ice, and that's when I saw it. About halfway across the bridge, something was parked on the shoulder, a small dark car covered in frost. Its headlights were off, but one of the taillights was faintly blinking. My stomach sank. I slowed the rig and grabbed the mic again. "This is northbound on Dalton. Ma'am, are you in a small black sedan on Alaskan Bridge?" "I'm right behind you, over." For a long moment, nothing but the hum of the engine. Then, "Please, someone help me." Same words, but this time I swear to God, I didn't hear it through the CB. I heard it outside, like a whisper carried by the wind, just faint enough that I couldn't tell if it was real. I pulled up behind the car, keeping my headlights on it. The windshield was coated in a thin sheet of ice, but there were no footprints in the snow around it. No movement, no signs of anyone inside. I hesitated, then grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The cold hit me like a hammer. My breath crystallized instantly. The world was so quiet that the sound of my boots on the snow echoed off the guardrails. "Hello," I called out. "You okay?" "You called for help?" No answer. I approached the car slowly, my flashlight beam cutting through the frost. The driver's side door was half open, just a crack. I reached out and pulled it wider. The inside was empty. No purse, no jacket, no sign of anyone at all. Just frost creeping up the glass and a strange smell, something metallic like rust or blood. The keys were still in the ignition, the engine dead. I felt my heartbeat start to rise, so I backed away, scanning the snow. No footprints leading away, not one. Just my own tracks. Then my CB crackled again, and this time from inside the truck. "Please, someone help me." I froze. I turned toward my rig. The cab lights flickered. The voice came again, louder this time, layered with static that sounded almost like breathing. "Please, someone help me." The wind picked up, howling through the bridge supports. For a split second, I thought I saw movement on the far side, a shape standing in the dark, half hidden behind the rail. I swung my flashlight toward it, but there was nothing, just snow and ice and shadow. I climbed back into the cab, slammed the door shut, and threw the truck into gear. As I started to roll forward, the CB let out one final burst of static, then a new sound, soft and rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap like fingernails on the mic. Then the voice whispered, barely audible but unmistakable, "Don't leave me here." I jerked the mic from the dash and yanked the power cord out. The sound stopped immediately. For a moment I just sat there, engine idling, heart pounding in my throat. I wanted to keep driving, but something made me glance in the rearview mirror. The car was still there. But now, faintly, I could see a shape inside, sitting in the driver's seat, head tilted toward me. When I blinked, it was gone. I drove the next 50 miles without touching the CB, just silence, the hum of the road, and the faint echo of that voice in my head, looping over and over, "Please, someone help me." Even after I made it to the depot, I couldn't shake it. The dispatcher said no one else had reported a stranded vehicle that night. No woman, no car, nothing. And when I went back to check the next morning with a highway patrol officer, the bridge was empty, no car, no tire tracks, no sign of anyone ever being there. But that night, when I got back into my rig and turned on the CB again, the static hissed softly for a few seconds. Then faintly, that same voice came through, clear as ever. "I'm by the bridge. My car broke down. Please, someone help me." And that's when I realized something. It wasn't her that was calling for help. It was the road calling someone else in. For a couple of weeks after that night, I couldn't shake it. Every time I sat behind the wheel, I'd glance at the CB like it was alive, like it might whisper my name when the static rolled in. I tried to tell myself it was just exhaustion. Long hours, low sleep, too much caffeine and not enough daylight. But every time I passed a bridge, I found myself staring out the window looking for that car. The black sedan that shouldn't exist. A few days later, I stopped at a diner outside Fairbanks, the kind of place where truckers go to thaw out and share stories. I told a guy named Roy about what happened, an old driver who'd been on the road since before I was born. He just stared at me for a long time, stirring his coffee. Finally, he said, "You heard the Dalton voice." I frowned. "What?" He leaned in a little, lowering his voice. "Back in the 90s, a woman's car broke down near the Atigun Bridge during a storm. Single mother heading home from Fairbanks. She called for help on her CB, just like you heard. But by the time anyone got there, she was gone. They found the car half buried in snow, keys still in the ignition, baby seat in the back." I felt my chest tighten. "And her?" He shook his head. "Never found. Some say she froze in the woods. Others say she got picked up by the wrong kind of person. But every winter since..." Truckers hear her voice. "Always the same words." He looked at me hard. "You stop for her, you don't come back." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't want to believe him. I told myself it was a trucker's ghost story, the kind of thing they tell rookies on long hauls to keep them from falling asleep at the wheel. But Roy didn't look like he was joking. A few nights later, I was back on the Dalton, headed south this time, empty trailer. The wind was screaming against the cab, and the sky looked bruised with snow clouds. My CB was off and unplugged, in fact. I didn't want to risk hearing that voice again. But around 2 in the morning, as I approached the same stretch near the bridge, I started hearing something strange. Faint, rhythmic, like a whisper beneath the howl of the wind. I turned the music off, listened harder. It was coming from the dashboard. Even though the CB was unplugged, I could hear it. Static, then a soft click, then that same voice, barely above a whisper. "Please. Someone help me." My heart started pounding. I reached over, yanked the entire radio out of its mount and threw it into the passenger seat. But the sound didn't stop. It was coming through the truck speakers. The GPS flickered, glitching between coordinates. The temperature gauge dropped from -20 to -50 in seconds. The windshield started frosting over from the inside, like something was breathing on it. And then, faintly, I saw it again. That car up ahead. The same black sedan parked at the shoulder of the bridge, taillight blinking faint red through the snow. I wanted to drive past. Every instinct told me to just keep going. But something made me stop. Maybe guilt, maybe curiosity, maybe that haunting voice in my head. I pulled over about 50 feet behind the car, headlights cutting through the snow. The bridge groaned under the weight of the truck as I stepped out. Snow whipped around me, blinding in the wind. The cold bit through my gloves like razors. "Hello?" I shouted, voice carried off by the storm. "If anyone's there, call out." Silence. I took a few steps closer. My flashlight beam caught the license plate, the same one I'd seen before. Frost had eaten at the edges, but the letters were clear. That's when I realized something that made my blood run cold. I'd memorized that plate number. I don't know why. Maybe my brain just latched onto it the first night. But when I'd gone back with the trooper, that plate hadn't existed in any database. Not registered. Not reported, nothing. Yet here it was again. Same car, same plate. Same impossible moment replaying itself. My flashlight flickered. The air around me grew heavy, like the storm had paused. The only sound left was the low hum of my truck engine idling behind me, and something else, a soft, steady tapping, coming from the car's trunk. I froze. The tapping grew louder. 1, 2, 3, like fingers drumming on metal. I took a step closer, then another. The trunk was covered in frost, but the metal looked wrong somehow, warped like something inside had pushed against it. "Hello?" I said again, though my voice cracked halfway through the word. "If you can hear me, knock twice." Silence. Then bang, bang. I stumbled backward. My breath came out in the clouds. My flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled into the snow. The CB inside the truck came to life again, even though I'd ripped it out. The same voice, distorted by static and wind, filled the night air. "Please, someone help me." But now underneath her voice there was something else, a second, deeper tone, like another voice whispering in time with hers. "Help me. Help me." My flashlight flickered once more, and in that brief flash I saw it. Not a person, not exactly. A figure crouched behind the sedan, pale as frost, its face just wrong, like skin stretched too thin over something that wasn't quite human. It turned its head toward me slowly. I ran. I dove into the truck, slammed the door, threw it into drive, and peeled out so fast I almost jackknifed on the bridge. My tires screamed against the ice, and as I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw the car's taillight go dark. The bridge vanished into the storm behind me. I didn't stop driving until I hit Fairbanks. I parked at a rest stop, hands shaking so bad I couldn't light a cigarette. I called the highway patrol again and told them about the car. They sent someone to check. Nothing. No car, no tracks, no sign of anything. For a while I didn't go back on that route. I stuck to shorter runs, safer ones. But Alaska doesn't give up its roads easy. And a few months later, I found myself back on Dalton late at night, snow falling thick. This time, I left the CB off completely. But even then, I swear I could hear it. Not through speakers, just in my head, faint and steady, like a memory burned into the static of the world itself. I'm by the bridge. My car broke down. Please, someone help me. I've heard other drivers mention it since. Some ignore it. Some say they stopped, saw nothing, and kept going. Others, well, they don't drive that route anymore. A few even went missing. Now every winter, when the air turns sharp and Dalton freezes over, someone reports hearing her again. The same voice, the same words. And if you're ever out there alone on that highway and your CB starts to crackle, don't answer it. Because whoever she is, she doesn't want help anymore. She just wants company. They say Alaska changes you. That if you stay too long, the quiet starts talking back. So next time you're driving through the endless snow alone, remember you might not be the only one on the road. This is Shadow Fear. Subscribe and join us next time, where the road ends and something else begins.